Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. By Machiavelli.
Welcome friends, I'm here to guide you with my colleague Murtaza on successful interviews.
Hello friends, thank you Kalpana. Before we go ahead, friends, tell me, is that you?
Is this you? Do you find yourself repeatedly in the wrong job? Do the positions you really want always seem to go to somebody else? Despite your best efforts, do you always lose your way to the interview or turn up without your CV or references? Do you find yourself stressed and cluttered on arrival when other candidates look sleek and well organized? Do questions sometimes take you by surprise? Do you wish you had some inside knowledge that would have helped you prepare more adequately? Preparing for the interview.
Now we are going to discuss the following topics.
Checking the job out carefully. Researching the company. Tailoring your CV. Setting up a practice group. Rehearsing. Checking the job out carefully.
It is always better to check your job carefully before the interview. Here are a few tips.
Ask for company information at the same time as you ask for your interview forms. Search for details on the internet or in the finance sections of the daily papers. Look for details, not just in profit and loss, but also about company culture. Talk to others who have been employed or interviewed by the organization. Check that company values are congruent with your own. Find out the company's policy on employee leave and benefits. Make sure you know why this particular post is vacant. Researching the company.
Now you may ask why you should do this. Now there are good reasons for it.
It gives you several advantages in the interview, namely,
it makes you look well organized and well informed. It saves time, you look less pushy, and you won't waste precious time asking irrelevant questions. It makes it easier for you to answer the interviewer's questions because you know what sort of person they are looking for and you can tailor your answers accordingly. If you can show that you understand the product and the company mission, your interviewer may assume you'll need shorter induction training. Anything about you that might save the company money will give you an advantage.
Now the big question is, how do you get such information? In this case, the internet is the best tool.
you may also try the below mentioned options.
Ask a friend for help. Most people know somebody who's a surfer. Go to an internet cafe. Some of them will give you help and advice. Visit the local library. Visit company's house. Check out the company directly. Check the government websites. Call the company direct. Tailoring your CV.
Now let us take one example. You see this following advertisement.
A zookeeper required for lions and tigers. Must have experience.
This may be the only information given, so take your time to write down as follows.
Job description. Person specification. Cleaning out cages of large cats. Hard worker, able to cope with messy, possibly dangerous jobs. Feeding large cats. Knowledge of very specific dietary requirements and ability to handle raw meat. Ensuring that large cats are healthy, they are harder and more expensive to replace than their keepers. Some expert knowledge and keen powers of observation. Ensuring that cages are secure and the public is safe. Attention to detail and powers of observation. Ensuring that the public is well informed. Without the paying public, there is no zoo and no job. Likes people and animals, ability to communicate. Ensuring that zoo management and fellow keepers are well informed. Knowledge of hierarchy and ability to communicate. Needs to be a team player.
When you prepare your CV, bear in mind the following points.
Many large companies feed CVs into scanners and they do keywords search. Tailoring your CV also enables you to keep it succinct and readable. Even CVs that aren't computer scanned will probably be reviewed first time around by an HR executive rather than someone from your department you're applying to. Leave no gaps in your CV. If there are gaps, you may need to make the dates a little more vague. Employers usually assume that a gap means imprisonment, mental illness, or undeclared pregnancies. If your work is IT related, for instance, then use a one-page summary CV and attach backup sheets with additional details such as software and applications. Summarize ambitions and key achievements at the top and keep personal details to a minimum. Give good reasons for leaving previous employment. Finally, take a moment to list your own personal selling points such as punctuality, ability to communicate sympathetically, honesty, efficiency, consciousness, profit-mindedness, and loyalty. Don't refer to anything that isn't on your CV. It is likely to make your interviewer query what else is missing. Setting up a practice group.
You can go on rehearsing questions in your mind and on the paper.
Think how great it would be if instead of walking with trembling hands and a blank mind, you could be calm and resourceful.
Rehearsing.
Competent and qualified people usually fail in an interview because they are too nervous.
Prepare a tell me about yourself statement with 6 positive points like these ones.
I'm well qualified. I've got lots of experience. I'm well organized. I have a good track record in this area. I'm a good team leader. I would fit into your organization perfectly.
Practice these statements over and over until they become second nature to you.
Now ask for a feedback from your friends. For example,
Ask him. Do you believe me? What is it that gives me away? Is my body language, my tone of voice, my eye contact, or lack of it?
Get some real detail here. Finally, ask for more detailed feedback. For instance,
What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How is my image? What changes could I make?
change yourself depending on such opinions. Even if you get the job, don't stop the process.
Psychometric testing and criteria-based interviewing. We all have ability. The difference is how we use it. By Stevie Wonder. In this chapter, psychometric testing, understanding psychometric tests, working on the criteria that count, doing aptitude tests and job simulation exercises.
Psychometric testing and criteria-based interviewing. The results of psychometric test, handwriting test, and intelligence test vary according to mood and test conditions. Now tell me and look within yourself. Is this you?
Do you regard an interview as a battle of wits? Are you always interviewed but never selected? Do you freeze in an interview? Or do you talk too much? Have you ever thought you'd do better if you knew what was going on in the interviewer's mind? Do you think you don't do justice in interview and that's why you never get the chance to prove yourself in a job? Psychometric testing. Self-trust is the first secret of success. By Ralph Waldo Emerson.
If you're given an handwriting test, an intelligence test, or even asked for your birth date, there's nothing you can do to change your basic data.
Understanding psychometric testing.
Psychometric testing is a way of measuring various aspects of mental performance, and they are mostly objective. Apparently, up to 50 human abilities can be measured by psychometric testing, but in practice, the focus is only on about 6, and they are as follows.
Abstract. This is about general reasoning and problem-solving abilities. This test usually involves sequences of symbols arranged in rows of squares. Verbal. These tests range from grammar and spelling to testing your ability to understand verbal or written information. Numerical. These tests cover BODMAS and they involve number sequences and the set of numerical data to solve problems. Perceptual. These again are largely used as aptitude tests to select people who would be best in scientific, engineering design, and technical positions. Spatial. The tests usually consist of pictures of shapes which may or may not be manipulated into 3D designs. This is crucial for engineers, designers, architects, and surveyors. Mechanical. These are very specifically used to assess people for more practical jobs and designed to test working knowledge of mechanical and physical principles. Personality testing.
There are no correct and wrong answers for personality testing. It is about how you do things rather than what you can do.
People are generally grouped into the following categories: extroversion, introversion, judging, perceiving, sensing, intuition, thinking, feeling. A forced choice question might be: do you prefer to plan what you do in advance, react to things as they happen? A ranking question might be: rank in order of interest, A to B, the following pastimes: going to the cinema, reading, going to a restaurant with friends. Working on the criteria that count. Learn to be flexible. It makes the curves in your life path much easier to maneuver. By Cherie Carter Scott.
If you concentrate on 3 main areas which concern most interviewers, you can easily prepare some positive, strong, behavioral examples for each area of your life.
Biographical. Evidence of your ability to do a particular job might include experience of living abroad, familiarity with a particular environment or lifestyle, or proven flexibility in living patterns. Technical. Measurable expertise, including specific qualifications, degrees, certificates, training programs, or experience in a particular area. Behavioral. Gathering evidence from your friends, family, and self-analysis will help take yourself apart, ready for reassembly according to a particular job specification.
Now, we shall see some typical criteria-based questions.
Tell me about the time when you worked hard but felt a great sense of achievement.
When planning permission for the new office development was turned down, I carried out another series of consultation and drove new plans. And in the third attempt, my plans finally got accepted and the building was done.
Do you think problems are better solved by better communications?
During the strike, I talked to the staff that what they really wanted. But the main problem was about redundancy and pay. I got the management to talk to them about the facts, that is the threat room, the nearest rival. And they agreed on a productivity deal.
What unpopular decisions have you taken?
I thoroughly believe that the benefits of the unpopular decision have to be sold to the people they affect. Otherwise, they won't work. Recently, the tea lady retired and we were going to install coffee vending machines on every floor. So I asked the staff how would they feel about this. And they were already grumbling and they said that it would be too impersonal. So I asked them what would they like, and they said a small coffee bar would suffice.
Give an example of when you did more than was required.
When we set up the first self-learning group for employers to develop their business skills, I joined the first 3 groups and I made sure that I attend every meeting to show my commitment.
Are you trustworthy?
My current line manager leaves me to oversee both payroll and purchases. And at the recent audit, our department showed the least number of discrepancies.
How do you handle stress?
I work well under stress, and I even sometimes switch off completely if needed. In my previous job, I used to run stress management classes for my junior executives.
Tell me about a project you started.
What happened is our monthly turnover was failing. So I organized a monthly training up-to-date program for my sales staff, and that way it worked.
Can you think of a time when you solved a problem at which others had failed?
Yes, I was sent overseas to manage difficult but creative people. And they didn't want to be management imposed on them. So I created a two-way process. What I did was they used to teach me in their system, and simultaneously I was teaching them new procedures.
What's your attitude towards efficiency versus staff satisfaction?
Sir, I don't believe there is a conflict. If the system runs smoothly, then it's good for everyone. But if the system isn't user-friendly, then by itself it will cause resentment and inefficiency.
How do you see yourself? As a leader or as a follower?
There are always people I can learn from. But when I am in a position of responsibility, I enjoy taking the lead. Although this will be my big promotion, I was also elected the chairman of the PTA committee of my child's school for 3 years. And I opened up a fundraising organization with them, which helped them to build a new swimming pool.
Doing aptitude tests and job simulation exercises. Focused action beats brilliance any day by eyetoye.
Many jobs give on-the-spot tests, and at senior levels, candidates are often given problems to solve. An interview which exceeds 1 hour, you can safely assume there will be hands-on situation. Here are useful tips for test.
Sort first, then prioritize with sticky notes. Take some with you. Resignations and people issues are always top priority. Expect important details to be near the bottom. Work through in the order you decided. Make an action list, including telephone calls or emails. Minimize memos. Establish rapport with the interviewer. Who do they choose? At the end of the day, they choose the guy they like the best. By J. Abrahams.
Establish rapport with the interviewer. In this chapter, we are going to see
In this chapter, opening moves, using representational systems to communicate fast, pacing and leading, observing the basic body language rule.
Now tell me, is this you?
Are you uncomfortable with people who are senior to you in status? Do you find it difficult to relax and be open with authority figures? Are you stiff and even sometimes a little aggressive? Or excessively quiet and unassertive? Do you wish you could form quick and easy working relationships so that you could be at your most quick-witted and likable when the job you really want is at stake? Opening moves.
as you walk into the interview room, be aware of your surroundings and the people waiting for you.
It'll give you enough information of the tone, mood, and style of the interview.
If you follow these techniques, you will gain 5 minutes before your interview.
Smile. Make eye contact and shake hands. Wait to be invited to sit. Even if you're invited to smoke, don't do it. Address your interviewer formally unless invited to use first names. Always accept a glass of water or a cup of coffee. It's useful if your throat gets dry and it gives you something to fiddle with. You don't have to drink it. Using representational systems to communicate fast. Whenever I go into a difficult situation, I imagine I'm alien, getting out of the spaceship and into a new environment. I have imaginary antenna, processing every little bit of information to help me survive. By Bilal Hadri.
We experience the world through our senses. For practical purposes, that's sight and sound.
Although we use all our senses, we all have our favorites.
Pacing and leading. The most important trip you take in life is meeting people halfway. By Earl J. Montrose.
If everything's happening too fast, what you can do?
You can slow it down, but always start at the interviewer's pace. Don't speak slowly for no apparent reason, because that is nothing but annoying.
Match the speed of your voice and gestures to the interviewer and come down to a manageable speed.
Observing the basic body language rule.
There is one basic rule about body language in an interview situation. That is, always be guided by the cues of the interviewer.
But before you attempt to mirror somebody else, make sure of your own natural pace.
Watch TV interviews and take special note of appearance, body language, and gestures. In any encounter, body language is of primary importance, and the second is the tone of voice, and the third is content.
Thinking on your feet. Test fast, fail fast, adjust fast by Tom Peters.
Thinking on your feet. Friends, in this chapter, we'll discuss the following topics.
In this chapter, buying time, buying signals, asking questions, controlling the content, taking notes, listening skills.
An interview is a sales pitch and you are the product. We're always selling something, an idea, a relationship, or a product.
By asking questions, by actively listening, and by taking notes so that you can refer back to difficult points.
Now look into yourself and tell me, is that you?
Does the knowledge that you are just one of many well-qualified candidates for every job make you feel powerless in interviews? Do you feel uncomfortable and incompetent when you're under pressure in unfamiliar surroundings? Do you find it hard to ask questions when you are intimidated? When you walk out of an interview, do you sometimes have the feeling that you were caught wrong-footed and you didn't do yourself justice simply because it was all happening faster than you were able to think? Buying time, buying signals.
It's important to listen carefully in an interview for live on-the-spot clues.
If you don't listen carefully, you may give the wrong answers to the right questions and the right answers to the wrong questions.
There are two reasons for asking questions. They are
To get more information about the job, to get a yes response. Would it be true to say that you are looking for somebody who will become good team player? If I were to join you, what would my first assignment be?
When you're almost on the verge of selection, how do you recognize the buying signals? There are two indications.
When the interviewer starts to ask you leading questions based on the assumption that you are appointed, for example, would you be happy with a corner office? Or, when could you start? Etc. When the interviewer's body language changes from negative to positive, like negative, leaning back or crossing arms, fiddling with a watch or fingernail, clenching hands, pulling an ear, positive, suddenly rubbing the chin, index finger on cheek, leading forward, rubbing hands. Asking questions.
It is important to ask the right questions as to answer the questions right.
an interview with questions and answers flying both the ways is comfortable for both the people.
Eric Hoffer says, in time of drastic change, it is the learners who inherit the future. Those who have finished learning find themselves equipped to live in a world that no longer exists.
Multipurpose questions are always welcome. It shows the candidate's interest in the job.
There are some great multi-purpose questions which you can prepare in advance, like,
is there a written job description? What kind of performance appraisal system do you have here? Would there be opportunities for growth in this organization? Is there provision for training? controlling the content.
Focus your mind on the strong points, not on the weak ones.
Use your CV in the interview if you feel you're losing your way.
A well-written CV gives a mini presentation of your good points and achievements.
One solid achievement will overshadow a lot of mediocrity and mistakes as well.
Taking notes.
Whatever may be the interview style, take with you your paperwork, your CV, and your best mindset to give you the best possible chance.
Pen and paper. Whether or not the interviewer is taking notes, there are good reasons why you should. In spite of the fact that you will be expected to talk for 85% of the time, it's the listening you do that counts. And because your listening time is limited, you'll have to make a quality effort to pick up all the clues you need. A receptive, positive state of mind. Run a double check. Write down your goal as soon as you start job hunting and repeat that goal to yourself every day, 20 times a day, including interview day. I am in the process of finding the right job for me. It may not be the ideal job first time around, but it's the first step to my perfect career, and it will give me the opportunity to develop my skills and meet new challenges. Listening skills.
Hearing what's not being said. What do you mean by that, Kalpana?
Half of the problems are created because we do not exercise our listening skills. Remember that God has given us this beautiful gift of 2 ears and 1 mouth. Therefore, you must listen more than you speak. It simply means that you have to pay attention to non-verbal clues such as body language and additionally words okay, we'll talk to you later, which simply means either the person is not interested in you or does not want to offer you. Use the following points carefully.
Nodding, interested facial expression, attentive body language, leaning forward, alert, repeating keywords, extending questions like, "That's interesting, tell me more." Why is that important to the company? Being remembered for the right reasons. Forget your opponents. Always play against par. This is the famous quote of Sam Snead, golfer.
Being remembered for the right reasons. In this chapter, we see the following topics.
Looking good, feeling good, sounding good, seeing eye to eye, getting into a right site, being interviewed by telephone.
You won't get a job if you don't leave a strong, positive, visual and creative impression.
Remember, an interview is a live performance. Look into yourself and tell me, is that you?
Do you feel both confident and comfortable when you go for an interview? Do you dress in a totally different style to the one you normally wear? Do you look good most of the time, or do you make a special effort for outings and interviews? Are you sometimes so absorbed by how you are feeling and looking that you forget to consider the needs of the person you are communicating with? Would you like to feel better about how you look and how you sound? Do you think increased personal confidence would help you build faster rapport? Looking good.
Georgia Bennett has quoted, "Polish yourself up first and your act second. Otherwise, you won't have an act."
Men and women wearing dark blue suits with white shirts and black shoes were considered 40% more believable than anyone else.
Wear one striking item. It could be a tie for a man or a scarf for a woman. Nothing offensive, but something memorable. Obviously, there are different dress codes for different fields.
Make sure that you are
clean shower and wear clean clothes and shoes. Minimize perfume and aftershave. Covered always. Wear a jacket and tights with your skirt or socks with your trousers. The only visible bare flesh should be your face, neck and hands. Check for smudges and dandruff. Take a hairbrush, mirror, tissues and sticky tape. Wear creaseless linen. Feeling good.
Your first task is to make the interviewer feel good. You can use mirroring and pacing techniques.
Here are some ways how you can help yourself.
Smiling.
It's almost impossible to be angry with someone who has a cute smile.
Double bind.
You will realize that your verbal message is less powerful than your body language because
it is difficult to be verbally aggressive or even disinterested with someone who is being physically positive and conciliatory. You can practice pacing and leading, raising an interviewer's level of interest and involvement, increasing the energy level in an interview, and gaining commitment. Check out your own natural body language tendencies and learn to moderate or exaggerate them at will. Agreeing with disagreeable people.
agreeing with disagreeing people can work to your advantage. Let me assist you with some techniques.
Breathe deeply and slowly. This always has a calming effect and is difficult to be loud and aggressive when your whole body is relaxed. Imagine your interviewee as a cartoon character, or just give him a Mickey Mouse voice. Only use this one if you find someone seriously threatening. In borderline cases, it may make you giggle. Sounding good.
Have you ever heard yourself speaking on the tape? Listen to yourself if you haven't. And then ask for a critical feedback. Also, you need to work on the feedback.
Seeing eye to eye.
Eye contact is difficult for many people. They know they have to do it, but they don't know how to do it.
People who make good eye contact take their cue from the people whom they are looking at. They look down when the first sign of discomfort appears.
If you suspect that eye contact is a problem for you, there are 3 things that you can do about it.
Practice with your interview group and get some accurate feedback. In the interview, make sure you have a cup of coffee and your CV to look down at from time to time. Don't look directly at the other person's eye. Focusing on their nose or forehead will feel more comfortable.
The sincerity triangle runs between the eyes and the nose. Avoid the triangle which includes the nose and the mouth.
Never allow your gaze to wander lower than your interviewer's face.
Getting into a right state. The height of accomplishments will equal the depth of your convictions.
Having a killer CV and all the answers isn't going to help if you're going to walk into with tension into the interview room.
If you meditate or practice yoga, you must be familiar with breathing techniques.
If you have never tried it, don't wait until you get into the interview. Start practicing now.
Meditate 5 minutes before your interview.
Being interviewed by telephone.
The advantage of phone calls is that you don't have to worry about the suit or the dandruff.
On the other hand, you're missing out on visual cues and there's no benefit of your smile.
So let us look at few important tips for attending telephonic interview.
You can still make the interviewer feel good about you by mirroring their verbal patterns and using a low-pitched, pleasant tone of voice. Eye contact may be impossible, but you should still look at the phone if you're looking at something else. You are not giving the conversation your full energy and attention, and that will show. It's better to stand than sit. Your voice will sound more energetic. And smile, of course. You can hear a smile. It affects the way the words come out. You can't know when you'll get the important call, so, when you're job hunting, make an effort to answer the phone clearly and pleasantly, with hello and the number. Use active listening. Say and yes, and ask questions regularly so that the other person knows you are paying attention. Take notes while you're on the phone, then you can quickly recap for the other person if they are called away. Standard interview questions. The will to win is not as important as the will to prepare to win.
Standard interview questions. Now tell me, is this you?
Do you think of the right answers to questions about half an hour after the interview has finished? Have you ever said to yourself or a friend, "I hate that question. I never know what to say"? Have you ever been completely blank in interview when you've been asked to describe a particular situation, only to recall the perfect illustration in the traffic jam on the way home?
Well, no problem. In this chapter, we are going to discuss
Your questions answered. Criteria questions. Knowing how to handle questions. Avoiding traps for unwary. Observing the golden rule. Handling tough interview questions. If you do nothing else, your questions answered.
Well, there are general rules for specific questions.
Listen carefully. Make sure you're answering the question that's being asked. Stick to providing what's been requested. Don't give superfluous information. It confuses the situation and won't do you any good. Don't interrupt the interviewer when you think you know what they're going to ask you. Wait until you've got the whole story. Don't flood the interviewer with information. When they say, "Tell me about yourself," prepare a statement which is relevant to the particular vacancy and try it out on your practice group. Criteria questions.
The likely criteria are
Initiative, stress tolerance, adaptability, leadership, problem analysis, interpersonal skills, team attitude, reliability, persuasiveness, innovation, delegation, diligence.
no matter what your profession, but you're likely to be asked a question from one of these areas. And let us see some practical examples.
Would you describe yourself as a well-organized person?
Yes, of course.
This is a hopeless question and an unhelpful answer. A skilled interviewer might ask,
How do you plan your day?
I review the day before I go to sleep. and I make some final notes in my diary about anything that is left over. Then in the morning, I am always on the early train, so I go through my detailed list, prioritize my task, and estimate how long each one is likely to take, so that I can keep some time for emergencies also. At last, before I go home, I review what has been done and what hasn't.
Knowing how to handle questions.
Answering a question with a statement is a useful technique for questions that don't have a right answer.
Do you often find yourself working late?
Here you can respond with another question.
What is typical in your department? I like to be efficient, but I am willing to be flexible.
Don't answer questions that show you in a bad light.
Do you think you have the right experience for this post?
It is easy to get this wrong. Either too much or too little experience could get you out of the job.
Do you need someone specialized in telesales? Perhaps you can tell me a bit more about what exactly you're looking for.
Sometimes you have to change a question in your way. Just watch.
What kind of things do you worry about?
Worrying is pointless. I prefer to take action and make changes. However, I'm more concerned about meeting deadlines, reducing staff turnovers, reaching sales target, and improving my company's performance.
Avoiding traps for the unwary.
What is most important at the workplace? Honesty or supportiveness towards your colleagues?
This question appears to be straightforward, but examining it closely, he's asking you to choose between your loyalty towards the company or your workmates.
I think that supportiveness and honesty are both equally important. However, I would never support a colleague if he was behaving dishonestly, either towards a company or with a client.
Tell me, what do you do if you felt your line manager was dishonest, incompetent, or had a personal problem?
That would depend on the seriousness of the problem and whether or not it was affecting his ability to do the job. Obviously, in case of dishonesty or incompetence, action would be required. A personal problem might or might not affect others in the workplace, and so I would have to make a judgment in that case.
Observing the golden rule.
The golden rule for answering interview questions is always to give a positive answer.
Tell me, what did you like or dislike about your last job?
Treat this question as an opportunity to show that you are positive.
I enjoyed my last job and gained some useful sales experience, but I'm looking for an opportunity to contribute that to building a new team with a higher conversion rate.
You'll attract not sympathy, but distrust if you walk out owing to disagreement. Typical questions that might tempt you to be negative. They are as follows.
What do you think of your last boss? What is the most difficult situation you have faced at work?
Never say anything harmful about your colleagues, managers, or the system. Always sell the benefit, not the product. Let us see some questions.
Why do you want this job? Why should we offer you this job? What are the reasons for your success? Give an example of yourself as a team player who can also work alone. What are you best at? What is your greatest achievement? What have you learned in your time with?
When asked what you are good at, make sure it is something they want. Let us have a look at it in the form of interviewing session.
What's your greatest weakness as per your colleagues?
I would like some more training, experience in appraisal interviewing. My staff seems happy enough about it, but I would gladly welcome the chance to raise my skill level in that area.
Handling tough interview questions.
Be ready for the totally unexpected questions. Remember these rules.
Innocent or irrelevant questions are traps for the unwary and opportunities for candidates who are on the ball. Always be on the lookout for a question or comment that might be a hook for some positive information about you and the job you're discussing. Answers should always end with a positive comment, giving the impression that you are a positive person. Watch out for ways of tuning the answer to the requirements of the job. The interview is primarily about the job, not about you. Avoid going into detail about anything that isn't job-related. Offer summaries. Double-edged swords.
What did you think about the breaking news this morning?
Don't wade straight in with your opinion unless you're sure of your company's standpoint. Do agree that it is controversial and ask the interviewer for his opinion and open up a discussion.
So, what is your overall impression about us?
Don't flatter or abuse them. Just be precise.
I really like your activities and the high-tech environment.
What will you do if you don't get this job?
Don't say, I don't care. Stay cool and professional.
It will be a disappointment because I've enjoyed this interview and I feel I have a lot to offer to this role. I am eager to work for such a high-profile company.
So, do you think the interview is going well?
Be neutral, but start with a compliment to your interviewer.
You asked me some pretty searching questions and I hope I've given you the needed information. I feel my experience and my skills are well suited for this job. But are there any more areas you need to know about?
Do you think you've lived up to your potential?
Don't be defensive. Come up with positive examples, and at the end, you can definitely say you still have some professional goals you're striving for.
So tell me, what sort of question intimidates you?
Don't say there aren't any questions. That sounds arrogant. Do choose a question that you've already been asked. I'm sure it will flatter the interviewer.
Apparently banal, but potentially lethal questions.
Did you have a hard time finding us?
Don't bore them as a pathfinder, but do compliment their directions.
I went to college around here.
So, how was your journey?
Don't go into details and don't make any excuses. Just make positive statements and that will make you look positive.
Oh, I got a seat so I could catch up on my reading, which was useful.
You look tanned. Have you been on a holiday?
I enjoy being outdoors when I'm not at work.
So, what do you prefer to be called?
Oh, come on. Don't tell them stories about your nicknames. Just ask the company people, how do they address their employees, formally or informally?
I see you're reading The Economist. What did you think about the article about global recession?
Be prepared if you're carrying the Economic Times. There's no way you can escape.
We have a pretty good badminton team here. Do you play?
Don't directly say yes or no. Make some positive comments in the middle.
Well, I don't understand the finer points, but I like to watch the game sometimes. What tournaments do you compete in?
Open-ended quicksand questions.
So, tell me about yourself.
Talk about yourself in relation to your job.
What are your priorities?
For God's sake, don't talk about family or spiritual quest, but do talk about work-related.
Questions that tell you not to bother.
Have you ever lodged a complaint about sexual harassment?
Such questions indicate whether you were the problem or the company was the problem.
What would you do if your child is sick and you have tight deadlines to meet at work?
An experienced interviewer will never ask this question. And even if he does, that would be to find out the number of dependent children.
Are you planning to start a family?
They aren't allowed to ask you this. But if you refuse to answer, it will be taken as yes.
Are you married or in a long-term relationship?
You don't have to answer this question.
That's an interesting surname. Were you born here? What's your mother tongue?
Of course, it may be out of simple curiosity, but it may concern your ethnicity.
If you do nothing else,
at least rehearse the question and answers of this DVD module before giving an interview. For instance, here are the replies you might give if you were going for a zookeeper's job.
Why did you leave your last job?
Because I wanted to get out of an office environment and use my knowledge about wild animals and my customer interface experience.
What is your greatest failing?
Sometimes I get impatient with paperwork and I know that I can work better in hands-on environment.
Failures are a part of life, so don't say you don't have any failures. Instead, use them as an advantage in another job.
What's your colleague's opinion about you?
At the last appraisal, I was described by most people as being demanding to work, but with a good team player.
What annoys you most?
Not reaching my targets for the days because I've forgotten to plan something in. I can cope with emergencies, but there's nothing you can do to predict those.
Answer this question pertaining to your job and career. For example, if your interviewer asks you what annoys you most, then you ought to answer, I get impatient with my colleagues when they don't finish their task on time. So in such a case, your attribute, your point, will be considered as a strength for the company because definitely the company wants the task to be finished on time.
Why are you the best candidate for this job?
Because I have a lot of experience with wild animals and I'm passionate about communicating my enthusiasm to other people.
Be strong and positive about this and pick up 2 criteria.
Why did you leave your last job?
Because I wanted to study animal care in more depth and spend more time with real people and everyday issues.
There are n number of reasons for leaving a job, but make sure you have a solid reason which shows that you're forward-looking and not the one who looks back into the past.
What's your greatest failure?
I always want to follow through with the problem and find out what really is happening.
What's your colleague's opinion about you?
At the last appraisal, I was described as pleasant and hardworking, but what they wanted was dynamic and ruthless.
Mind well, a fault in one situation can be a virtue in another.
What irritates you most?
Days when I'm on the phone all the time, rearranging meetings and lunch appointments, when nothing actually gets done.
Prepare a selection of answers to the questions we have listed.
Discuss them, think about them, and practice them. Then step into your interview with confidence.
There is no chance of failure.
All the best.